Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, we're going back again. Uh, it's hip hop month, it's hip hop week on the 12 Kyle podcast. As many of you know, or probably all of you should know, hip hop turned 50 this month at the time of this recording. And one of the things that I said I wanted to do was to, in honor of hip hop, do some album reviews on some albums that I had not previously done. Now, today's episode is going to be on an album that honestly I thought I'd already done. And I had to actually go back and look in the archives and be like, oh, wow, I didn't do that one. So we're going to take it back to an album that was released, excuse me, August 1st, 1989. The debut solo album from the D.O.C. entitled No One Can Do It Better. Man, I guess I probably should start by saying I love this album. All of the albums that I wanted to talk about were albums that were kind of pinpoint certain points in my life. Um, and this one is no different. If you've been following the podcast, I've done previous episodes this week, just basically dropping an episode a day, which is something that I had never done before. And this one right here is special. This is one of my favorite albums. I think arguably it's probably the best album to come out in 1989. But one of my favorite hip hop albums, definitely of that year. One of my favorite hip hop albums, period. Man, where do I start with this album? I guess I probably should start with, like, for me, the D.O.C. came out of nowhere. Like, I know he was a member of the Feel a Fresh crew. And I think I only found that out because I was looking on the album covers or the liner notes, I think probably on the NWA and the Posse album. But yeah, I didn't know who this guy was. He had this very distinct voice and very distinct sound. And for in fact, I probably until about, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, I didn't know D.O.C. wasn't from LA. I assumed that he was from LA. He sounded like everybody. And the cats he ran with were from LA. So, yeah, I go way back with this album. So it drops 1989. Around, I want to say I was probably a junior in high school when this album came out. And so me and my friends, we we were huge fans of Eazy-E, huge fans of the Easy Does It album. Subsequently, even bigger fans of the NWA album Straight Outta Compton. And this was next up to bat on Ruthless Records, the D.O.C.'s debut album. The album was produced by obviously Eazy-E and Dr. Dre. Man, I guess I probably should start with this album because, like, where I was musically really was at a point where I really was, me and my friends, some of my closest friends, we really gravitated toward what you would now call West Coast hip hop. And I can't really say why, but it's like that music really resonated with us. For me, it goes back to, Ice-T, early Ice-T on the Power album, then King T, Act a Fool, and then of course, NWA, Easy E, then NWA, then Ice Cube, so forth and so on. But like, really, for somebody like myself who grew up in Florence, South Carolina, um, in a weird way, and I tell people this all the time, like in 1988, in 86, 87, 88, and definitely 89, what's weird was you could get your hands on a West Coast album before you could get something from New York or Philly. And I can't really say why that was, but like me and my friends, we just really, really gravitated toward the music. Plus, the West Coast, and it wasn't even really West Coast. It was just basically LA for me. I just really like the vibe, man. Those dudes from NWA on down, everybody seemed to have a real chill vibe. Even if you weren't gangster, like you could take an act like 783. Shout out to Coolin and Cali. They weren't thugs or anything like that, and they weren't gangbangers or anything like that. At least not to my knowledge, they weren't. But they just had a sound and a vibe that cats like me in the South really could pay attention to and kind of identify with. And they all seem to be on something different. And I think one of the things that stood out to me about not just the D.O.C., but the whole NWA posse and the crew was that they were really, really looking to make their kind of music and put on for wherever they were from. Now, I'll be the first to admit, the first time I heard the word Compton, I didn't know that Compton was anywhere. Like I didn't know where it was, and then I made the connection of it's in L.A. But like I'd always heard of L.A. I'd never heard of Compton until NWA. But that quickly became someplace that you don't want to go. Compton, California. Shout out to Uncle Dolomite from the Too Much Game podcast. He's the mayor of Compton. But yeah, man, this album right here, man. Like I said, I assumed because D.O.C. ran with him, I just assumed that he was from Compton, literally. I mean, he could have been from Gardena for all I know. I don't know, but this album, man, was something different. And the cool part about this album was, again, the D.O.C. had a very unique style, and his voice sounded totally different from any other MC that I'd heard. And I think that's something that really goes unsaid. And we as hip hop fans, especially old school fans, old heads such as myself, we can definitely appreciate the uniqueness and the variety of rappers that we had. Because back then in 1989, you couldn't come out trying to sound like somebody else. And NWA had their own flavor. They had their own look. The black jackets with the black Raider hats. I mean, that was a cold look. And the thing about it was like we at least I was somewhat hip to gangs and colors. To me, that was black was a neutral color. So I just assumed, again, assuming not knowing because we didn't have the internet in 1989, that there were no gangs that wore black. Like if you wore black, you were just down with the Raiders and you were down with the NWA if you were from LA. And so I laugh at that now because I mean, obviously I know better, but yeah, it was I can't even really call it gangster rap. It was D.O.C. was just he was dope. It was really it was a dope album, and it really kind of took a lot of people by surprise. Like I said, he had a very distinct voice. And he could rap. I mean, make no mistake about it. He's from Dallas, Texas, but he could rap. And we learned further down the road that one of the most important things that you can remember about D.O.C. is his pen. Not only could he rap, but he could write. And he wrote a lot of rhymes for Easy. He wrote a lot of rhymes for NWA. He ghost wrote on The Chronic. So the D.O.C.'s pen is legendary. It's almost as legendary as his, once golden voice. But yeah, man, this album, at least for me and my partners in Florence, man, we loved it. I just remember, I remember buying the tape, and man, I played that tape forever. In fact, I that tape, honestly, is one of the few tapes that I still have. I actually saw this tape at my mom's house the last time I was at home, and I didn't bring it because I mean, no need for me to bring it with me because I don't have a tape deck, but I still have that tape. And what's interesting is if you look at the cassette tape of No One Can Do It Better, like all of the writing on the label and stuff is gone because I played that tape so much. And all of my friends, we love the D.O.C. And this was an album that I can't say we knew that it was coming, but once we got our hands on it, man, it was a wrap. For me, they were, 3 for 3 because first Easy Does It came out in '88, and if you're following the podcast, there will be a Easy Does It album review because that album this year is turning 35 years old. It's crazy. Um, and then of course Straight Outta Compton, which I did an album review on that as well. And then this was the third release. No One Can Do It Better. Now, when you think about this album, one of the things obviously you think about is the production. He got some stellar production from Dr. Dre, and I mean, Dr. Dre's not going to ever come short. But yeah, this album sonically still to me sounds very good. It's one little thing I probably change as far as the sonics is concerned, and I'll get on that once I get into the tracks. But no, it's a solid album from front to back, easy listening. The album total runtime is 48 minutes and 25 seconds. In '89, that wasn't a long album. That was really about how long you wanted the album to go. Idealistically, in '89, you probably wanted your album to go from anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes. And I think you'd probably be fine after that. And this was just a little bit over that. But I mean, again, the D.O.C. was so dope, man, that, you didn't care. This album sonically, I think, still resonates with me. It's still something that, and it's still an album that I still listen to. A lot of times, we will do these album reviews, and you hear people do album reviews and stuff like that. And, they go back to the albums and they say, well, I hadn't heard it in a while. And, it's probably maybe, who knows, maybe the last time they'll probably listen to it for a while. But this one stayed, it stayed in the rotation. And it's an album that I still go back to, at least once a month, because some days I get on my West Coast stuff and I just want to hear West Coast. And, this, and when I go West Coast, a lot of times I go back. And this is one of the ones that I think, helped birth the sound that resonated for not just West Coast, but East Coast as well. Because the thing that was dope about the D.O.C. was that even though he was from the West, and in this particular time in rap, because we didn't call it hip hop at the time, in '89, people really wanted to know if you could rap. That's it. Like, you really didn't have too much as far as coastal biases or anything like that. The South really wasn't established as far as MCs are concerned. So if you could rap, that was it. And then, a lot of people, hip hop heads such as myself, the thing we always looked at was to see who you were down with. So if you were, let's just say I'm MC Wingtips, right? And I'm down with Sir Mix-a-Lot. If you like Sir Mix-a-Lot, then you think, okay, well, MC Wingtips must be all right because he's down with Sir Mix-a-Lot. Conversely, if you down with NWA, you gotta be dope because there was no such thing as like having some whack dude out the crew get an album or record deal. It didn't happen like that in the '80s. In the 2000s, it was very prevalent. But yeah, I mean, so his association and affiliation with NWA, Dre, Eazy-E, Ice Cube. I mean, like, there are hip hop fans such as myself that really refer to the D.O.C. as a member of NWA. And I've always viewed him as such because of his involvement, not only in their song making process, but the look of the group. You see his videos when you saw like the video for It's Funky Enough. Of course, NWA's in the video. And it's just he was always there with them and they were always there with him. So I always considered him to be a member, not somebody who was just specifically down with the crew. But yeah, incredible album. I would implore all of you, after you finish listening to this podcast, if you haven't heard the album, do yourself a favor. Go listen to No One Can Do It Better. This album bangs to this day. Now let's get into the tracks. The album, like I said, was released on August 1st, 1989. I want to say this album is platinum, which is saying a lot because from the NWA crew, you wouldn't think that they would get a lot of airplay, but he had a couple of singles that got a lot of airplay, a couple of videos that was in the rotation at BET and Yo MTV Raps. So, the DOC was everywhere. So the first single is Funky Enough, which was released June 16th, 1989. Then the second single, the D.O.C. and the Doctor, released October 5th, 1989. The third single, The Formula, was released in 1989. And then the fourth single that was released was Mind Blowing, which also was released in 1989. As far as the tracks, all of the tracks were produced by Dr. Dre. The album starts off with the lead single is Funky Enough. This joint, man, it still bangs. I mean, like, and it's funny because, like, as the DOC is rapping and he goes into this kind of Caribbean type flow, which honestly, if we're being real, you didn't hear, I mean, that was damn near non existent in rap. Maybe with the exception of KRS-One, I can't think of anybody else who had that type of style on a particular song in rap. And I mean, this guy's coming out the gate, and this is his first single, and he's doing that. Then track 2, Mind Blowing. Track 3, you got Lend Me an Ear, which is a crazy, crazy joint. The Commercial Blues featuring Miss Chalet, which is funny. They had their little skits and stuff. Then we moved to track 5, Let the Bass Go. Track 6, Beautiful But Deadly. Now, this one, he kind of touches into a little bit of rock and roll. I'm not as big. You know what? It depends on the mood. I'll be honest. If I'm in the mood, I'll listen to this. If I'm not in the mood, I'll skip it. It's not a bad song. It's just that heavy metal sound. I was just like, ugh, like, come on, man. I don't know what Dre was thinking about on that one, but it's not corny. And to be honest, Run DMC did the same thing. So I'm not mad. LL too. So I'm not mad at the attempt. And I won't necessarily say that it was an attempt to cross over, but you really don't hear a lot of guitar riffs in rap songs. I mean, not heavy metal guitar riffs in rap songs. That's pretty much non-existent. But he tried. So track 7, the aforementioned the D.O.C. and the Doctor, one of my favorite joints. Then track 8. Man, this might be my second favorite track. No one can do it better. The title of the album. Man, that joint still bangs. And I mean, like, when I hear this song, it always takes me back to, being in high school in the Nissan Sentra sitting on 13s. Track 9, Whirlwind Pyramid. Then you got track 10, which is more of a skit as well. Commercial 2 featuring MC Ren. Then track 11. Track 11 might be my favorite track on the album, The Formula. He had a video for it and everything. This was vintage Dr. Dre on the beats, vintage D.O.C. Cold ass song. Then you had track 12, Portrait of a Masterpiece. And then the final track of the album, track 13, the grand finale, Posse Cut featuring NWA. Listen, this is, in my opinion, this is one of the best posse cuts in hip hop that hip hop is seen. It's not the best. It's not up there with Scenario or the Symphony, but I might it's a top 10 posse cut, and I don't think that's a stretch. And me and my boys, we'd always go back and forth about who had the best verse. But that's the album, and I mean, like, this album, man, it still resonates with me to this day. Obviously, anytime I talk about albums, particularly hip hop albums, the inevitable question comes up. Well, how many mics would you give it? Okay. This album was not initially reviewed by The Source when it first came out. Because again, it came out in 89. I don't know if The Source were doing, for whatever reason, they didn't review it because The Source was out, I think, by 89. But for whatever reason, it didn't get reviewed. The Source came back later, subsequently in 2002, and reviewed this album and gave it 5 mics. That's a lot because you know what 5 mics is? As you see my shirt, classic. Um, no, it's not a five mic album. If I had to give it a mic, I'd probably say it's 4.5. It's a four, strong 4.5. Um, Beautiful but deadly can go. If you say one got to go, shout out the eclectic, the originator of one got to go. Um, yeah, that's got to go. I could do without beautiful but deadly. Everything else fits. Even the skits fit. Um, like I said, the album front to back, and I mean, if you take if you take beautiful but deadly off the album, I mean, you got a 42 minute you got a 42-minute album, which is right in that pocket that I spoke about a little earlier. Um, but yeah, man, this album is cold. Like I said, I never get tired of listening to it. And for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure if you're hip hop fans, you know what happened. Um, Unfortunately, 5 months after this album came out, the D.O.C. was in a near fatal car accident. He had been drinking, had been smoking weed, fell asleep behind the wheel, crashed his car, was ejected from the car. He had to go through plastic surgery, and he had a couple of surgeries on his vocal cords, which were severely damaged. And I mentioned earlier about the golden voice because I think on one of the songs, the D.O.C. does say that he had a golden voice. And that's the last that we've heard that golden voice sound the way that he does. Now, the D.O.C. has a very raspy voice. Um, and at the time of this recording, there had been some uh, talk about the D.O.C. possibly recording more music, but using an AI assisted voice. Um, I don't know how I feel about that, but I would love to see the D.O.C. back out there rhyming. I ain't gonna lie, because I'm a fan. Um, but yeah, it was, and he went on to record another album, Helter Skelter, and of course he contributed to the Chronic for Dr. Dre. You heard him on skits, and you've heard him talk, and you've heard him do interviews. But it's still not the golden voice that we remember from the D.O.C. And hopefully, prayerfully, he can get some of that back. I don't know what the likelihood of it happening is. Um, but yeah, it was, and to be honest, I remember hearing about the accident, but I don't think we knew what the severity of it was. We just heard that he was in a car accident and he was hurt bad, and then it came out maybe like a couple of weeks later, like, yo, he can't talk. Like that was the initial thing. I remember hearing that on the radio that the D.O.C. couldn't talk, and I'm like, damn, man, like that's got to be messed up. I mean, this guy he was literally about to take off. I mean, like because he was already a star. I think had the D.O.C. not gotten into that car accident, sky would have been the limit for that guy. Because again, he could rap, he had charisma, he had a really good stage presence, and I mean, he was down with the world's most dangerous crew. So I don't think for a second that the D.O.C. would have fallen off or anything like that. And I mean, like he was a staple that was able to put his flag down for L.A., Dallas, um, and he did some production as well. So I mean, like he was a really well-rounded. I shouldn't say was. He is a well-rounded um, entertainer, nonetheless. Um, but yeah, we'll never know. And hopefully, like I said, his voice will. Maybe he'll be able to do something with AI. I'd be down to hear it. I'd be down to listen because again, I'm a fan. But this album here, man, this album is cold. Like I said, I give it 4.5 mics. I think that you all should check it out. It is definitely worth putting on your list of albums to listen to and review. Um, and the D.O.C. I think he really held it together because we would subsequently see NWA go their separate ways, and you know the D.O.C. stayed with Ruthless Records, so he was still with Suge Knight, and he persevered through all of that stuff, man. So I think props to him. And again, I'm a fan. I think this is an incredible album. Again, I'm glad I got a chance to review it. I'm really surprised that it took me this long to review it, and but I'm glad that I did. and I want each and every one of you to check it out as well. Because again, like I said, this album, it got a lot of play in my room, in my headsets, in my car. Because I was at that age where I really gravitated toward the music, and this version of West Coast hip hop was dope to me. And I think it's very important, and it's important to history. And I don't want the D.O.C. to forever be known for that accident. He put out a incredible album, and he should be celebrated. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Remember, the podcast drops each and every Thursday at midnight. From time to time, we drop bonus episodes on Sundays. Make sure that you check out the YouTube channel. All of the episodes are on YouTube, so you can watch there as well. If you feel inclined, hit us up. Drop us some money. $ TWELVEKYLE on the Cash App. Again, that's going to do it for me. This has been an album review of No One Can Do It Better by the D.O.C. celebrating Hip Hop Week, Hip Hop Month. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5G.